giving another presentation. Some of you know I've been a member of the Science Circle for some years now. I think it's fantastic what this group does in keeping us uh, up to up to date on different fields in science. I really like that approach. Some of you have been coming to my talks. This is the third on a series of talks on virtual worlds and virtual reality in education museums. This is the third in the series on Triassic dinosaurs. So I'm Dr. William Schmachtenberg, Day Miami in Second Life. I am a retired earth science teacher from a high school in Southwest Virginia. I also taught college level geology and paleontology for 18 years at Federal College. I'm a research associate at the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Also, I just got added to as an adjunct professor in geosciences at Virginia Tech. So I've been busy. All right, so I hate to put this as rules, but this is sort of the way that, thanks, Sis. This is the way that I roll. I know some talks prefer that you wait to the end of the talk to ask questions and post comments, but I'm not that way at all. I have my local chat open. Feel free at any time if you want to ask a question or make a comment, then please post it in local chat, and I'll be happy to stop and do the best that I can to answer it. All I ask is if it's going to be a question, put question in caps so I don't miss it. All right, so basically I started this project in 2022, and after I retired in 2021, I decided I was going to go out west. My PhD is actually on the geology of Wyoming, Montana, basically the Rocky Mountain states and the Cretaceous. So I decided I was going to go back out to Denver in 2022. I made it in September, just dodging COVID. And I met with the good folks at Dinosaur Ridge. I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about that in a while, but basically, as a result of meetings that I had out in Denver, it was decided that I would make some computer simulations, virtual worlds for the Mesozoic. So the first time period we picked was the Jurassic, 150 million years ago, and I didn't know much about this time period of the sort of the general information. The folks at Dinosaur Ridge, though, were very helpful in getting me up to speed in terms of the dinosaurs that were around, the landscapes, and so on. Just redoing the landscape took months because a lot of the landscapes that are available for computer modeling have modern plants, which just didn't exist 150 million years ago. So it took quite a bit of time. By the way, I see some of you have heard some of my previous talks. This is just going to be a quick review of what I've been doing, and then I'll get to some new material. So don't worry if you've heard this before, there's new material coming up today. So, like I said, I worked with the folks at Dinosaur Ridge in Morrison County, Colorado, put together the simulation. It was VR, it was multiplayer, and like I said, I'm a research associate for the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So they have these dinosaur festivals once a year during the summertime, typically at the end of the month. And so what I did was I said, give me a table and some electricity and internet, and I was happy to run it for the guests. And we had a number of people come. It was really cool. We had families show up, and I was able to put the kids in the VR headsets. Here you see in this slide two of our setups with the kids in the VR headsets. And then there was a third computer that was also logged into the simulation where parents could log in and see what the kids were doing. And this was totally team building based. So as the kids ran around, the idea was for them to try and find and learn as much as they could about the dinosaurs and animals that lived during the Jurassic. So as one student found a dinosaur, it showed up in all the headsets for all the children that were logged in. And a good one, Vic, why the dinosaur crossed the road to get to the dinosaur festival. I hope it was an avian dinosaur. It's just a play on the why the chicken crossed the road. All right. So one of the things I looked at was how popular VR was, and going into that first festival, I worked with several other paleontologists in the Virginia area, and there was somewhat of a concern because at the time, Meta, the old Oculus headsets, were recommended for children or people 13 and above. And myself and all my helpers told the parents and the children that VR was intended for ages 13 above. And the response we got was unanimous. Parents basically did not care. It was strap the headset on my kid. I'm happy with it. So what I did was I decided to take a look at, what the popularity was. Did children want to play on just the PC version? Did they want to try the headset? The VR headsets overwhelmingly were more popular. Over 75% of the children were more than happy to wait to get the VR headset on so that they could try the sim in virtual reality. So one of the things that one of the questions I had was, okay, so VR is popular, multiplayer is popular, we all get that, but are they learning anything? So I decided to return to my high school, and they graciously welcomed me back. And they said, sure, if you want to work with the children again, or I should say the high school students again, you're welcome to. They sent out, I worked with, I think it was 2 or 3 teachers there, and set up the headset, and the students got a chance to run around in it. And what I asked them to do was to take a pre-quiz while attendance was taken, and then go into the VR simulation, and then take the same quiz after again. So I could sort of get a feel, are they learning anything? And the results were very interesting. Just having the students take the quiz and then do this VR simulation and then the post-quiz, they didn't learn much. We only saw about a 10% rise in their knowledge, which was surprising because all the answers to the quiz were in the VR simulation. But I learned, well, teenagers just don't want to read. Surprising. So they really didn't get much out of it other than running around and finding dinosaurs and clicking on them. So what I did next was I said, let's change my educational strategy. So you would think, Sis, okay, that the pre-quiz would get them focused, but it didn't. So I found a better strategy to use the VR simulation as a teaching tool. To basically, I would stand behind them. I could look on their screens and see exactly what they were seeing. And so I'd say, hey, look over there. Do you see that dinosaur? What is he doing? And I found that if I used the simulation as a teaching tool in addition to, a lecture in the back of the ears, scores went up 32%. So I saw a nice big jump when I basically used a VR multiplayer virtual world simulation, sort of like an active board, which is what most teachers use these days. So next thing that happened was we said, well, the Jurassic went so well, why don't we shift to another time period? So in end of 2023 and into 2024, I switched to the Cretaceous about 67 million years ago. And what I liked about the Cretaceous is now we're getting closer to modern day, so it was easier to get a very realistic, beautifully photorealistic rendered landscape right off of, I use Unity, right off of the Unity Asset Store. And um, Erin Count, who was my main coordinator, collaborator in Colorado, she's a gamer too. This was awesome. So she gave me a list of what dinosaurs she thought should be in the Cretaceous sim. She even went on to the 3D modeling marketplaces and said, I think you should get this model and this model and this model. And she did a great job. What I found out was really good looking models cost money, spent almost $1,000 in just the landscape and the models. But I was able to get a grant, so that helped out. And I think it really paid off because the simulations turned out amazing. All right, so here's what the simulation looked like of a T-Rex and a Triceratops. And of course, the next summer, that would have been the summer of 2024, went back to the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Uh, the museum was great. I got enough money that I could afford to hire, I think it was 4 people that summer to help me with running the simulation. And here you see a child with the parent going through with the VR headset and looking at the dinosaurs and so on. The problem was that in going from 23 to 24, Unity, the main program that I was using, switched around their virtual reality program plugin. So instead of the traditional classic one, they switched to the new XR rig system. And the plugin that I was using, Extremality, for multiplayer functionality was not updated to that new XR rig system. And as a result, I ran into problems. I basically could not create a multiplayer VR system. So that was a bummer. But nonetheless, kids enjoyed putting the VR headset on and running around. The other thing that I found out was the parents, again, did complain at all, even though Meta was saying you're not supposed to use this with kids younger than 13 or 10. The parents said go for it. In fact, you know the old I want to have my kid's picture taken with Santa at Christmas. Well, that one fell by the wayside, and instead I got a request for can I take a picture of my kid with the VR headset on? I said I don't care, go for it. So I would have made a lot of money. I should have charged for it like we do at Christmas time, but what the heck. So what was the end result? Well, again, we saw a big jump in the knowledge that the kids learned about. Um, Scores went up 32% using the VR simulation, and I'm not really surprised at that. Dinosaurs excite kids. These kids and parents were there to learn about dinosaurs, and the fact that they could learn about them in a virtual reality environment, I think, just added to it. Uh, Okay, Vic's wondering, I wonder what study they cite for not allowing kids to use VR. Vic, I think you're talking about Meta, and I think there were more Meta is more worried about content, and once you get the VR headset, then you go on the Meta store, and there's a lot of titles on there that I just don't think are appropriate under 13. So I think that was their big concern. In fact, subsequent to that, they said, well, with parent permission, we'll let the kids as young as 10 get on the Meta headsets and use it. So if parents are sort of monitoring what programs the kids are looking at, then they felt better about that. I think the jury is pretty much still out deliberating on safety issues concerning using VR headsets. I know I talked to my doctor before I did any of this. His main concern was, hey, you're going to be swapping these headsets from kid to kid. That's not the way they were designed. You need to wipe them down. So I was lucky I had anyway with 3 or 4 people helping me. So between each use, we had alcohol swabs and we ran around, the straps and so on, try and kill germs as much as possible. I've talked to ophthalmologists and optometrists about does VR damage the eyes, and I got a resounding no from the experts there. So I'm not so concerned about health hazards as I am, I guess, with software. There was one study with really young kids where they found that if children are exposed to VR, the VR is so immersive that young children had trouble distinguishing between real life and virtual worlds. For example, they did one study where they had zombies attacking them, and some kids walked away thinking that zombies actually exist, which of course isn't true. Um, so I guess there's concern there. I get seasick in some of the. Sumo, you're right. Um, there were very few people. My principal one, and I think there was 1 or 2 children that said, "Hey, I'm starting to feel some nauseous being in the VR environment." And I said, "Well, just take it off. If that's the thing that's happening, you don't need it." Um, I think that the frame rates have really increased their excess of 90 frames per second. I think that's really helped eliminate a lot of the nausea that's involved. And of course, once they get the frame rates up, then they started coming out with roller coasters, and people said, "Well, I want to feel a little nausea on a roller coaster." It was bizarre. All right. Susan's asking, have I tried case control study with the quizzes? One group that didn't have the VR experience with the quiz, and then who has the experience. Yes, I tried that back in 23 or 24, and I have the results somewhere. I forget which report it is, but I did see obviously an improvement. Um, yeah, what we did was with some of the teachers, some of the kids didn't bring in their parent permission slips, and as a result, couldn't do the VR. So they got the lecture and they did the quiz. I think what we did was a quiz, we did some lecture, and then the post quiz. And they showed some improvement, but not as much as the VR, as I recall. So I think the VR is helpful in teaching it. Oh, the other thing I want to bring up, the big surprise in 2024 was I took account of the age of the children. And interestingly enough, the average age of the children was 11. And the funny thing is, I had kids as young as 2 years old being strapped in the headset. The parents said, "Yeah, I want a picture of my kid in the headset." And I'm going like, "You really want to put a toddler in the VR headset?" And they go, "Yes." So I did, and the parent took the picture, and then the kid started screaming, and the headset came off. I don't know why you would let a 2-year-old do VR, but the parents wanted it. So um, anyway, all right, so 2024 is over, and so it's time to think about 2025. And if you're keeping track, so we did the Jurassic, I did the Cretaceous, so the period that's left is the Triassic. And so that's what I focused on at the end of 2024 and into 2025. And that worked out very well because the museum wanted to focus on the Triassic during the festival in 2025 because we have Triassic age rocks in Virginia. We have Triassic age dinosaur footprints in Virginia. So I said, cool, let's play around with that. So this is one of the first Triassic simulations I did in late 24, 25. I knew that Coelophysis dinosaurs were very common back then. They've been found in very high numbers at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. So I put one of those. I got a great model of a Coelophysis. I also know that there were other animals such as phytosaurs running around at that time. So I was able to get a skull for free. And so I put a phytosaur skull in. The wooden logs you see there are reflective of the petrified forest that's in Arizona. And I put an inland sea there. So the first thing I did was, before I tried to do a VR thing, I said, let's try a multiplayer sim. If I just used Unity and put extremality in, it worked. I was able to get a multiplayer simulation. And for the last couple of years, I've been working with a family in Arizona, and they have well, at the time, 5-year-old boy, and they had a 12-year-old girl. And the 5-year-old boy was just learning his alphabet. So I said, well, he likes dinosaurs, so why not come up with a program where he can go in the simulation. If you look carefully, you'll see his head above the water, and then I'm standing next to him in this lake. And the idea was that as he typed letters on the keyboard, the dinosaur would respond. So if he typed an E, the dinosaur would eat. If he typed a D, the dinosaur would drink. Basically, I mapped the keyboard commands to Boolean variables, which switched from false to true, and those triggered animation changes in the dinosaur. It's a really cool part of the Unity program. So it was fun to play around with that. And the thing that was interesting was that I played this simulation with the 5-year-old once or twice, and then I came back a couple of months later, and he would say to me, "Hey, I really like the dinosaur game. Can we play it again?" So he was hooked on it. And then a month later, instead of just running around looking for dinosaurs and talking about the Triassic, he said, "Can we play hide and seek here in the game?" And I hadn't thought of doing that, but he evidently liked playing hide and seek in real life. So now we've got a kid that's applying sort of a real life game that he liked to play into a virtual world. I mean, this kid is going to do amazing things. I want to follow and see where he ends up, but I like the thinking that he was trying to create content of his own Wasn't very technical, but he got a lot more out of the simulation than I thought we would be having. Yes, that was really cool. Kids can be very inventive. All right, so in October 24, I'm thinking, all right, I want to do the Triassic. So uh, I was in New York area, and I go, there's a great exposure to the Triassic in Connecticut. In fact, the dinosaur footprints in Connecticut are world famous. So I was invited by some of you may know them, BJ and Roxy, on Second Life. Good friends. I contacted them. I said I'd like to come to Connecticut. They said, "Oh, we've got a big house. Come and stay here. You can stay in our guest room, so you save the cost of a hotel." They gave me free food. I remember the taco pizza, especially good up in Connecticut. So they got me some taco pizza, and we had beers. So for those of you that the people that say, well, why should you be on Second Life? This is a great story of where we help each other out. I saved a ton of money by knowing people in Second Life who we got to the point where we knew each other that they welcomed me in their home. So that was cool. Not only did that, but I get to Connecticut. I didn't know Connecticut very well, but these guys are locals. So I'd say, okay, I want to go to the Peabody Museum. Okay, we know it very well. And they drove me in their car to the Peabody Museum. And then we went to Dinosaur State Park and met with the head ranger, Mike Ross. And I said to him, exactly, says, so I talked to Mike and I said, I want to do a Triassic simulation. He said, that would be awesome. He wanted to do a virtual world for the park, but he said we want to do it with Unreal, the Unreal game engine, rather than Unity. He had concerns about licensing and legal aspects of it, and I said, well, I'm not as good at Unreal as Unity, but I'll give it a shot. So he gave me a tour of the park. He showed me the footprints, showed me they had reconstructions of Connecticut during the Triassic. And Triassic, one of the things he wanted, they have this one spot inside the museum where you could actually see dinosaur footprints. And he said, I would love it if we could have like a virtual reality thing where you can actually see the dinosaurs walking across the footprints. And I thought that should be possible using the new headsets, the Oculus 3 ones that are coming out. So we played around with a little bit with that. I didn't make as much progress as the virtual worlds, but I'm thinking, wow, that would be cool if we could do something like that. All right, so anyway, here is the simulation that I eventually came up with for Dinosaur State Park. And I collaborated with Jenny Borst. She worked at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, just knew the geology and fossils very well. She's also a gamer. I love how young paleontologists are gamers. That helps out a lot. So she goes, yeah, obviously you want a lot of coelophysis running around in your simulation. And I found some really good models of phytosaurs for you. And she told me exactly which ones to download and put in the simulation. And you know, some water in there. The Virginia Museum of Natural History, we know during the Triassic that there were areas of Virginia and Connecticut that flooded out. There were plants that formed, so much so that we have coals that formed around Richmond. So must have been a lot of plant material back in the Triassic. Yes, I put a poll in the sim, says, because I think I put just a sign for anybody that runs it. It said Triassic simulation, some copyright information. But that's why the poll is there. It's easy to take out. All right, so anyway, here is, if you zoom out, sort of like a drone's eye view of the simulation, this is what it looks like. And I'll tell you, I was a little bit hesitant switching to Unreal, but after I started playing with it, I really liked it. It has some tools in there that Unity doesn't have in terms of the terraforming landscapes. And basically, when I talked to the curator at the museum to prepare for the Dinosaur Festival in 25, he said, we want to focus on, during the Triassic, Pangea is ripping apart. That supercontinent is splitting apart. Africa is separating from North America. As it rips apart, you form what are called these rift valleys. and then the rain comes down, the rivers empty into them, and you form large lakes. And that's the model we want guests to come away with. So we were able to come up with a really good visual representation of what the Triassic was like in Connecticut and Virginia. Doesn't work for Arizona, but for the eastern part of the United States. So when guests came, we could put them in the simulation so that they could visually see what we're trying to explain to them. So Dinosaur Festival rolls around last summer, July 25th, 26th. I go down there. I was able to get a couple people to help me. I got Darian Bradley, who just graduated from Virginia Tech. He knew a lot about dinosaurs, and also got another geologist, Logan Howell from Virginia Department of Energy, to come help out. So here we are at the festival. One of the things I like about the festival is we have 2 days where everybody in Southwest Virginia just descends on the museum. Here are a couple of undergraduate students from Virginia Tech. They brought some actual dinosaur fossils with them to show off and explain what they knew about dinosaurs. So it was a really good festival. I love going to them and meeting people. Um, Here are my helpers, like I said, Darian and Logan Howell. I had trouble this past summer hiring people. The museum said I could hire up to 5 people, and I could only get 2. So saved a little bit of money. But to be honest, when you're doing a VR simulation like this at a museum for a festival, you really need help. I am so grateful for any help I could get because running this would have been a nightmare. In 2024, we were literally overrun by guests. I didn't have enough setups and not enough help. Um, yes, and Susie's saying there's a big rift in Eastern Africa. He is absolutely right. If you look at a map of Ethiopia, um, there's a part in the northeast part of Ethiopia where you could see the mountain ranges pulling apart. Geologists call it like a big zipper, where Africa is rifting apart. It's probably the best example of a modern day country that's ripping apart due to plate tectonics that we have. Uh, Good question. I don't know sumo off the top of my head. Have to look at sort of plate movements. If you Google rate of plate movements, you should be able to see the plates that are involved there and get that. All right, so now here's time for the bad news. So, like I said, I got a simulation, played around with Unreal. I get to the museum in 2025, and the VR just did not work. I don't know what was going on with Meta, but I just could not get any the virtual reality sim. If I had one, I did have one, but it just wasn't running. I ran into more problems. The old Quest 2s that I were using in 2023 and 24 where I couldn't log them in to the Meta servers. I bought a Quest 3. It wouldn't even connect to the internet. Um, and So I decided I had to go with a single player PC version. And thank you, Sumo, for looking that up. Yeah, 2 to 15 centimeters, that's a lot faster. Average plate movements are about 1 inch or 2 centimeters a year. Okay. So like I said, fine, we're going to fall back and punt. We're just going to use the Unreal simulation I had created for uh, Dinosaur Ridge. And here you see a parent, mother, and son on the computer simulation. We had 3 laptops set up. So I was running one, Logan ran another, and Darian ran a third. So we had experts on every one of the headsets explaining to the children what the museum wanted them to know, which was a really good educational experience. 130. Again, what we did was I asked uh, parents and children to take a pre-quiz, made up just 5 questions this time, and then they ran through the simulation, and then we hit them with a post-quiz. And we got the best results of all 3 years. Guests arrived at the museum knowing about 51% of the material we wanted them to know. By the time they were done with the simulation, we jumped up to 89%. That's a 38% increase in knowledge that we want to know. That's the biggest increase that I've seen. Um, let's see here. Mike is saying, yeah, poor internet connection is a problem. Um, so, Mike, let's talk about that later. Like I said, I got the Quest 3, and I have good internet in my house, but I couldn't even get it to connect. I tried a couple of different ways, so I hope they've found a way around that. Okay. Um, So, one of the things that I tried doing this past summer, which was a real concern, I talked to the curator, I talked to the director of the Virginia Museum of Natural History, is the role that creationists are playing in Southwest Virginia and actually some of the southern states. And I was watching, I think it was in the Roanoke Times, I was reading about that a museum had opened up in Kentucky, and basically it was a creationist museum, and they had pictures showing some of the exhibits, things like dinosaurs, humans living with dinosaurs, and the 6,000-year-old age for the Earth, and so on. And I talked to the director, and he said, "Yeah, we've got to do something to address this." So some of the questions I asked the 130 guests that came to the museum were, did dinosaurs live with humans? How old are these geologic time periods? Are they thousands of years old or millions of years old? So we got some really good data on this. So uh, of the 130 guests that we polled, 80% of them were giving us reasonable answers. They knew that humans did not coexist with dinosaurs. They knew that geologic time is in millions of years rather than thousands. And I know, Vic, I'm glad Vic is here. I wanted to come to your misinformation talk that you did earlier in the year. Unfortunately, I just couldn't attend. So maybe later on we can talk about this or bring it something up. Um, but I am really concerned about misinformation that creationists are. I think they're well intended, but just misguided in terms of what they're sharing with the public. So I said 80%. A lot of adults think the Flintstones are real. Um, 80% of the guests knew, humans did live with dinosaurs, and the age of the Earth is in millions and billions of years. Um, and about 18% said that they did coexist. No, 18% thought that humans and dinosaurs did not coexist, and about 3% said that dinosaurs lived with humans. Okay, after doing the simulation, and Sis is absolutely correct, we found that using the simulation, we were able to drop it to 3%. Um, so we were able to go from about 80% of the guests thinking that humans live with dinosaurs to 3%. So I was very happy with that. The museum was very happy about that. Um, it was a good study in this. All right. So, like I said, I've been working with a couple of students in Arizona. I also started a collaboration project with the 12-year-old girl was very interested in Unity, so I tried to start a collaboration with a girl in Vietnam. And the students, the girl in Vietnam and the girl in Arizona, decided they wanted to create a dinosaur 3D platformer game. They want to make it multiplayer, so it was really a lot of fun getting these girls together again. I like collaborating with other scientists, but I want to see if we get some children to do that. And so they wanted to make this app. And the fun part was I actually got to teach a student in Asia, in Vietnam. And everything I've ever heard about Oriental children is absolutely true. I remember the first time I logged in with Zoom, and the father introduced me to the daughter, and the daughter looks at me and says, "Teacher, ready." Going like, "Oh my gosh." I'm not used to that. So it was a lot of fun teaching her. One of these problems I ran into, her English was good, but there were some things I said where the father had to translate into Vietnamese. We had to worry about time zones, and so there was like a 12-hour time zone. But it was really a lot of fun, and I hope leave the kids alone. Um, so I'm hoping that app will be created. The problem we ran into was it was interesting to compare the parents in Vietnam with the parents in Arizona. And when I started getting the kids together, the parents in Arizona kept saying, "Oh, we got to worry about privacy. I don't want you to share a picture of my daughter with the parent or the child in Arizona. I don't want them knowing the real life name of my kid. So the parents in Arizona were very much concerned about privacy, and I get that. The parent in Vietnam was the exact opposite. He had no problem sharing a picture of his daughter with me or the folks in Arizona. He had no trouble sharing the name of the child. And I think I worry about the fact that maybe some parents are taking the privacy thing a little bit too far, because I know there's some work that I've done with this 12-year-old in Arizona, and it's gotten to the point where I've started publishing some of that. I think most of us are familiar with VEG, Virtual Educated Journal. I've published a number of articles in there on some of the work that I've done with this child, and I want to give her credit. She put a lot of hard work into it, and the parents said no. Um, and I regret that. I think kids deserve credit. And the way we're getting around it in the future is we're going to use screen names. So I'm referring to her as Arizona Cat Lover, sort of like Mark Mark Twain with Samuel Clemens. Maybe that's the way that we get around the privacy issue because I think children should deserve credit for hard work, and I'm seeing some amazing work that kids are doing. If you want to see what the sim looks like, here you go. So basically, I was working with the student in Arizona and the one in Arizona, and here you see a very crude avatar because we're trying to do this on the cheap. We found a free avatar. We found some free dinosaurs. One of the things that we were playing around with, sure, all of us have pseudonyms tag. Um, One of the things we were playing around with that really worked out very well was we started playing around different textures for the dinosaurs. And we came up with one that was almost totally transparent. If you look really carefully, as at the real center of there, do you see the outline of the dinosaur? It's sort of almost grayed out. So I'm thinking that would be really cool coming up with sort of ghost dinosaurs so that if you're running a simulation of an area, say South Dakota, you could almost imagine the dinosaurs coexisting with you as ghosts. Um, yeah, Vic. So we got to discuss that. I think we all know that children under 13 are not supposed to be on Second Life, and I know some of them are. Um, Not sure about that. I know when I was a teacher, um, and I would go to educational conferences, there were a number of teachers that had no trouble putting kids, elementary school kids, in Second Life. I, as co-chair of VISTI, said I didn't like that. I was opposed to it. I was chastised for it, but I wanted kids to be safe. Um, I'm not sure what the answer is there because the children I work with in Arizona, the parents have no trouble putting them on Second Life. Now they monitor them like crazy to make sure that nothing happens, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean it's like putting them on Facebook, social media, internet. There's always problems. So anyway, this is what the sort of the first view of the app that these kids are working on. Right now, it's working on PCs. We've got it running on Android as well. We did get a multiplayer version running on Android, or at least the parent over in Vietnam was able to get it to run. So, like I said, we've got a crude model. If anybody is interested in this, I think I have somewhere the Android version if you want to try it on your phone. My nephew in New York tried, was able to get it to run on his phone. So I know it does work. Yes, Sumo. Let me know and I'll send you the link. I do have permission to get beta testers. In fact, I haven't heard from the folks in Vietnam. I need to contact them. But yeah, Sumo, just send me an email or something. You have all my information. And I'll look up the link after. All right. The other program that I'm releasing for free is 3D Dinosaur Adventure. I got together with the folks at Dinosaur Ridge, and one of the things we decided was we wanted to make a longer simulation. This was early in 2025. So we came up with this game. I'm really proud of this. Was done in collaboration with Virginia Museum of Natural History and Dinosaur Ridge. And basically, what you do is you start off in the deserts of South Dakota, and you're running around. I should say the Badlands of South Dakota, and you're running around, and you get to find dinosaur bones. You get to drive this cool red pickup truck around the area. Although I'll warn you, the pickup truck is a little buggy with it, and there's a whole tent. If you look carefully, you may be able to see some dinosaur bones in the distance there. And as you run around, as you get closer, you get to pick them up, and there's an inventory system, and you can. The idea is to eventually to collect all these bones. One of the things that I put in, um, if you look in the lower left-hand corner, uh, yeah, Oregon Trail with dinosaurs. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, there's actually a mini map, but it's more than a mini map. It's actually a geologic map, and it's got little green triangles in there. It shows you where all the dinosaur bones are found. I tried it. I actually went to a geology conference and tried it with a guy from the U.S. Geological Survey. He said, "This is awesome." He said, "You need to release this as soon as possible." He said, "I would play it with my daughter," and I'm going like, "Wow, what a great um, review." So anyway, this is about. Let me show you a little bit more what's in the program. So here you see the inventory system. It shows me picking up some dinosaur bones in the Badlands of South Dakota, and it labels them. It gives you information about each bone that you find. After you've found all the bones, then you go in this game where you have to drag the bones onto the correct location on the skeleton. And it actually helps you. If you don't know where the bone goes, you just drag it on the screen and it snaps into place. And there's now three different levels. There's an easy, medium, and hard. Easium is, like I said, just drag it on the screen and it snaps into place. Hard, you got to know pretty much exactly where it goes, or it's not going to work. There's another, after you do the anatomy game, yes, I learned a lot about anatomy, not only dinosaurs, but human anatomy in doing this. Um, After that, you have to create a family tree of dinosaurs based on morphology. So you have to drag the pictures of the dinosaurs onto the dinosaur tree. And again, it tells you where to put it on the right spot. And then you in there you can go back in time to the Cretaceous. So there's a mini map to help you find a reconstruction of the dinosaurs. There's a lot in this program, and there's even a dinosaur prep lab uh, where you can run around. I got permission from the Virginia Museum of Natural History to do 3D scans of their dinosaur bones. I also got permission from a museum on Long Island to do some of the scans of their bones. So you can actually run around and see what are in collections that even if you went to the Virginia Museum, you wouldn't have access to. A lot of this stuff is locked up um, behind doors, but I was able to get in and got permission to scan it in. So there's a ton of content in here. I was going to release it on Steam and trying to make some money off of it, and the more I thought about it, I said no. So I am offering this for free. All you got to do is send me an IM or an email, and I'll send you the link to either the app that the kids are making or to 3D Dinosaur Adventure Game. And here's an example of me running around the lab. Here you see a Triceratops horn. And once you get close enough, you can actually rotate the dinosaur bone around so you can see it in 3 dimensions. Let's see. Oh, and there's also another activity where you can drag the dinosaurs into the correct time periods that they lived. Um, Christy Deathridge, the director of the Virginia Museum, said we really need an activity like this because a lot of kids, due to Jurassic Park, think that all the dinosaurs lived at the same time, and that's clearly not true. So a lot in this program. Like I said, if you're interested, you want to try it, let me know, and I'll put the link in. All right, so some conclusions that I've come up with is virtual world sims can dramatically increase students' learning of scientific content. Collaboration of between educators, technicians, scientists, and children are very important for developing accurate models for simulation. It's interesting. I've started looking into the science standards for different states, and some states like Arizona, their science standards are ahead of the game. They require students to create or use models in science education. Now, a lot of these models, I presume, are they're thinking just dioramas that teachers can, all right, here's some plastic dinosaurs and here's some soil and make them. But I'm thinking the other way you could interpret this standard is to use virtual world simulations. And students in different countries should be collaborating together as well. And that's it. All right, so Vic is saying family tree idea is wonderful. Talk about ecologic niches for older kids. Invite dinosaurs. Oh, yes. Okay, good point, Vic. Yeah, that's something that I started exploring back in 2024 with the Cretaceous. And you're absolutely right. A lot of schools now are going towards um, environmental science rather than earth science. And what better way of teaching about the environmental niches and so on than to talk about dinosaurs? These ecosystems involved everything from autotrophs like plants all the way up to apex predators. So they're really good for discussing it. And a lot, when I went back to my high school, one of the things I talked about a lot because I was teaching environmental science classes was to talk about the adaptations that dinosaurs have. If you look at Triceratops, for example, Triceratops, look at the feet the next time you go to a museum, they flare out. And the reason they did that is they lived in a swamp. So if they didn't distribute the weight of the Triceratops over the sediment, they would sink in, they would get stuck, and then they'd be prey to whatever nasty predator was running around. If you look at the heads of Triceratops, there are some little hornlets around the crest, and scientists wondered what they were for. We now think that Triceratops could rotate its head around because it's not like our heads. They're on a sort of ball and socket joint, and they have really powerful muscles. They could probably flip their heads around and rotate them, so the whole crest becomes like a big buzzsaw. There's some amazing interpretations that are coming out of Colorado. We're reinterpreting a lot of what we know about dinosaurs. Include fossil trees and other plants, like in New Mexico. And yes, definitely. One of the things that, one of the feedback that I got from Dinosaur Ridge is they really wanted the plants to be accurate. So I remember Aaron giving me a list and saying, forget about deciduous plants. They didn't exist back in the Jurassic. Plants did not drop their leaves in the fall. What you had were things like evergreens, like pines. They're fine, or ferns. They've been around since the Carboniferous. So, like I said, it took a lot of work, but I was able to get a model of a landscape, strip off the modern vegetation, and then put in plants that lived back in the Jurassic or Triassic, whatever. It just takes a lot more work. It's very tedious to come up with something that is that's accurate. All right, and Sis is saying, what about the impressive arthropods of those times? Yeah, it's funny you say that. Sis, you're ahead of me. I wasn't going to say it, but you brought it up. I am pivoting as I go into 2026. I'm going to be moving away from dinosaurs, and my next research project is on trilobites. And so stay tuned. I've got some really cool things to tell, a follow-up lecture. Not do it today because I'm just getting started on Ordovician trilobites, 450 million years old. I'm starting to work with scientists at the American Museum of Natural History, um, and also some folks upstate. Yeah, insects I don't know much about, sad to say, but insects from the Carboniferous are cool. If you like big insects, like roaches the size of a house cat, yeah, look at the Carboniferous 230 million years ago. But some really cool. I'm switching to trilobites and hope to come back and give you a really good lecture. And one of the things I like to put forward, um, I started uh, trying to get back to the American Museum of Natural History because as a teenager I would visit there from time to time, and I talked with one of the curators, and she goes, "Yeah, we can meet sometime." And she really wasn't in a rush. And Curious George found out that I was going to the American Museum of Natural History, and goes, "Oh, I've got a friend, Rebecca Oppenheimer, there." George emails Rebecca and says, "Bill is coming. You need to meet him." And so all of a sudden, the American Museum got very interested in me visiting there. So I'll tell you guys, boy, I would never leave Second Life. I've just so many times it keeps impacting my real life. And Vic's saying a mammal they found eating a dinosaur or a baby dinosaur inside a mom. Oh yeah, um, yeah. So there are cases. I'm trying to think where it was. I think it's in the Jurassic. I was at the Peabody Museum and they talked about how some early mammals got big enough they could go after baby dinosaurs. And there's Vic, look into myosaurs. They are the mother dinosaurs that evidently took care of their young. Let's see. I don't know if the O2 level was that high in the Mesozoic. I suspect CO2 levels were. It was certainly O2 levels was certainly highest in the Carboniferous, and water content was high back in the Carboniferous to support such large insects. Yeah, Dolly's saying big bucks in the Carboniferous. You're welcome, Vic. Always fun coming here to talk to you guys.